Cause
I need to replace my string since it doesn't seem to like to tune. It's been a while.
it's been a while.
The fact that she said it's been a while, the answer is yes.
When in doubt.
Yeah, I'm gonna change them this afternoon. I didn't want to do it right before today.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the tuning could be a bit,
All right, I hope I remember what we're doing.
Same. So sophisticated. Oh, that is lovely. Like so expensive chords.
They are. They're
It's
muy caro.
Yeah, paid extra for that, definitely.
I don't know, why doesn't it want to tune to E? Is it because y'all keep playing? Lie silence for 1 second, please. I just gotta see why this is. I can't tell.
That's been in my head all week. That song is like, that's my new earworm.
I love
1000%.
that one.
That one's just constantly going.
Maybe as we get closer to it, there's a song on the album called "Ode to the Summer." Equally as just
Yeah.
vibey.
I can have on in the truck and I'm tapping out. Love that.
All right, it'll have to do. Thanks, Eli. Sorry. I just think sometimes when there are a lot of other instruments around it, even though it's an internal tuner, like the notes, the things are vibrating. So.
sensitive.
Very on point.
Jesus.
Ready?
Go ahead, babe.
Stop. With your feet in the air and your head on the ground. Try this trick and spin it. Yeah. Your head will collapse, but there's nothing in it, and you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Way out in the water, see 'em swimming. I was swimming in the graveyard. The animals were hiding behind the rock. Yeah, except the little fish. And they told me he swears, try to talk to me, koi koi. Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Way out in the water, see 'em swimming. With your feet in the air and your head on the ground. Try this trick and spin it. Yeah. Your head will collapse, but there's nothing in it, and you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Way out in the water, see it swimming.
Morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Can you all hear me? All right. Welcome. Let me test. All right. Hop over a microphone. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. And I will try to keep my eye on AV if I can drop the microphone. Welcome to our Sunday morning service. You made it. Everyone here in person, or I'm sure there are many online watching us. Welcome however you are connecting to our worship service this morning. It is good to be with you all, good to be together here in our religious community where we are a people with a purpose. Our mission at First Unitarian Church of Rochester is that through spiritual connection and community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves, we open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. If you are new or new-ish here, I extend a special welcome to you and invite you to stop by our welcome desk if you haven't already to help get connected. If you are here because you're going through a hard time or you are worried about somebody else who is, please reach out to our pastoral care team. We have a pastoral care associate. Elise is in the back with a beige and rainbow stole on. You can connect with her during or after the service, or reach out to there's a email and a phone number and all sorts of things in our newsletter and on our website to get connected if you need support. If you are not so new and have been around for a while and might be interested in helping to create that welcome for our newer folks, we are looking for more volunteers for our Sunday morning hospitality team, for our welcomers, our greeters, our ushers, our coffee crew, which of course is a very important, essential part of Sunday morning. So if that ministry of helping to create a warmer welcome for those coming through our doors, please stop by the welcome desk and get connected with some of the volunteers there. I think we have a sign-up sheet. A couple of quick announcements. One is, there's more information in our newsletter, but we are excited to be rolling out a new church app and a certain website you'll be able to go to called Church Center. It'll be a one-stop shop for all things church-related, and we're having a big launch day next Sunday, the 23rd. So keep your eyes out for emails about that, and come on next Sunday, ideally with your smartphone if you have one, ready to, we'll have volunteers ready to help you download the app and get your profile set up and get connected to everything. So we're very excited about this new tool that we'll be able to use. And those were the two announcements, the Church Center and the hospitality team. So, taking a deep breath to center yourself as we gather for worship, we acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door, and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral and contemporary lands First Unitarian now stands. If you're online, I invite you to light a chalice with you, and here I'll invite our worship associate, Chris. I don't think I remember to say I'm Reverend AJ. I use he and him pronouns. I'm one of the ministers that serves this congregation. I'm excited to lead worship with Chris and Orange Sky, our band, and the AV team, and all of you. And I will need your help to start worship properly with our unison words to light the chalice. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Born to live now, born to die, like a fading trace, older in the blink of an eye, mortal, flesh and blood. Oh, your eyes that see, and your heart that beats. Wait for the mood to change. Oh, I hide away. Oh, I try to escape. Out of my mind tonight, the world has never been clear, taking me by surprise in every corner now, letting my heart decide, but I'm not listening. It's making it hard to find my way. Wasted another day. On my way to find that I've worried the whole of my life away. Day turns night again as it closes in. Where have you been? Don't leave me alone. Out of my mind tonight, the world has never been clear. Take me by surprise at every corner now. Letting my heart decide, but I'm not listening. It's making it hard to find my way back in again. Making it hard to find my way.
Check, check. Am I on? Check, check, check. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris. I use he, him pronouns. And, of course, as Reverend AJ said, thanks for braving whatever that is and being here this morning. We all very much appreciate it. I walked out of the house this morning, and I said, we're going to be all on Zoom today, aren't we? So I have long said that my two favorite places to be in the entire world are my friend Tiffany's makeup chair. She's a makeup artist. And on the floor at a Butch Walker concert. So most of you don't know who Butch is. Butch is a singer, songwriter, producer, came of age in the late 80s, early 90s during the sort of end of the hair metal, early grunge period. Best known, I think, today as a producer. He's produced Pink and Taylor Swift and Fall Out Boy and a bunch of artists that you know behind the knobs. And Butch has a very dedicated fan base to Butch as a performer. Butch and the Marvelous Three, his old band. I've seen Butch 10 times and more than anybody else. And I will drive great distances to see Butch and the band play. And one of the things that happens at every single Butch Walker show is at the end of all of his solo shows, one of two things happens. He will always, as an encore, as his last song, come out into the middle of the floor. He usually plays these sort of Irving Plaza, big open floor, not seated kinds of places. And he will come out in the middle of the floor with a guitar, and he will encourage everyone to sort of get down. You know, everybody will sort of get down on their knees, which at almost 49 is not as easy as it once was, but and then one of two things happens. Either it'll just be him and an acoustic guitar in one of these absolutely transcendent moments where it is silent and there's just one sound, and it's his guitar and his voice. Or if he's in more of a celebratory mood, it is one of these things where it'll start like that, and then all of a sudden he will encourage everybody to jump up and sing along, and there are usually balloons or confetti or some sort of really cathartic musical moment where we celebrate for the fact that for this last hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours, we have been in this space where regardless of what is going on outside the world, what weather, what societal craziness, we are one being in music and in joy, and that, friends, is why we come to church. Not because Orange Sky is going to get out in the middle of the floor, and not because we're going to confetti or any of that, but you don't have to drive, 8 hours down to New York City like I did in October for that moment. You can get moments like that here on Sundays, here in community with the people around you. And with that, I would love for you all, as we get started, to take just a quick moment and make a friend. Introduce yourself to your neighbor, and I want you to tell them about a musical artist that you don't think they know about. We'll bring you back.
No, I hear they're metal. They're metal.
Who is? Power Man 5000? I like new metal. Yeah. Right. I don't think that's the original version. Maybe, yeah.
I guess everybody didn't know Sid Arthur, and then we heard the song, so that's my contribution.
There you go. What's that?
I said,
Oh,
Sid Arthur.
yeah, totally.
That song, so that, there we go.
Did that sound haughty? 'Cause I
Female led band called Superwoman.
Yes, I've heard.
Incredible. They did this incredible song called Cape Town Blush. Like, it's so good. And I'm a big fan of it. Well, I'm sure you are sharing some wonderful musicians and some fantastic musical moments in your lives. And I apologize for having to disrupt that. But the show must go on. And I am here to tell you the Time for All Ages story. My name is Sarah Jackson. I wear a lot of fun hats in this congregation this morning with the band. But I'm also our admin for religious education. And I am here to ask a question. Do you guys think trees can talk to each other? I mean, we talk to each other. And we have a deep ways of forming connection. And I think the other way that we form really deep connections, I even did this morning, is we have pets. Does anyone here have pets? I have 3. I have 2 cats and a 6.5-year-old dog named Diamond, who I like to refer to as my little guy. She follows me around. She likes to jump into my Zooms. She likes to sleep in my office. And I unembarrassingly like to talk to her like she is a person at every turn. In fact, this morning, I told her, Mommy will be home soon. But she does have to go to church, which, so you know, church is Diamond's also favorite place. She loves coming here with me. And so maybe one day we'll see her. But in those conversations with Diamond, I realized those are really one-sided. I do a lot of talking, and she kind of looks at me with a goofy smile, and I think, what could she be thinking? Probably that if I smile hard enough, maybe Mom will give me extra kibble tonight for dinner. Or the special treats she keeps on top of the refrigerator so that I don't rip open the bag. But all of that thinking about what pets think made me think, do trees think? And other plants? And maybe even the special prop my friend Tay has. Tay, will you bring me what I think is the most thinking plant? This lovely pint of portobello mushrooms. Now, Miss Amanda, who can't tell the story this morning, asked me to and brought me these and said, this is my dinner, so please be careful. And she said, the portobello mushrooms had something super interesting to say. They told me that I have to eat them because they're delicious. Which, you know, in the plastic packaging must have come in probably a little muffled. or they're very loud mushrooms. But they also told Miss Amanda and myself about their friends in the woods and forest all around the world. See, mushrooms are fungi, and there are different kinds of fungi, and their siblings and cousins and friends around the world aren't very edible, but are very cool. Mycelium, who live underground attached to tree roots, connecting wide swaths of forest so that the trees can talk to each other and the mycelium can talk to each other. And can you believe it? Something that we pass by every day, not even knowing it's there, is having deep and beautiful and meaningful conversation. It kind of blew my mind. Have any of you heard of this? You all are so much cooler than me. And so it sounds like fungus and plants and animals and humans all have their very own special and deep connections and experiences for being alive. And I think that's really cool. And I'm never going to look at this fun little pint of mushrooms or the pine tree that sits in my front yard the same again. So may this story unfold in your hearts until we are together again.
And now invite us into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer, beginning with the stillness brought by silence and quiet contemplation. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us. Divine presence known by many names and in many ways. Ever-present mind within us, among us, and beyond us. Help us to maintain hearts and minds that are open to miracles of love in times of tragedy. Open to anchors of stability in times of chaos, and open to inspiration and action when we might otherwise freeze. There is so much being lost right now, so much suffering, so much needless violence and hatred. Spirit of life, lend us the vision to see beyond our own fear. Lend us the strength beyond our own self-doubt. Lend us courage to build the world that we seek, so desperately want to live in with others, even as the tumult and strife roils around us like a great tempest. As we gather in spiritual community, may we share the joys and miracles of life with one another. May we express our gratitude for the gifts that we are blessed to receive and also shoulder each other's burdens. The collective heart of our community this morning is particularly heavy with sorrow for Sam Nordquist, a 24-year-old transgender man who was murdered in Canandaigua recently. Our hearts break for this trans beloved who should still be among the living. Our sorrow is weighty. Our rage is righteous. And our love is ever strong. We pray for the dead, and may we fight like hell for the living. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be. We enter now into ritual to bring what is on our individual hearts and lay it on the collective altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, bring to mind whatever grief or growth or gratitude is alive within you this morning. Online, you are invited to share what this is in the chat, and here in the sanctuary, you are invited forward to light a candle at one of our altar tables. If you would like an usher to bring a candle to you, please simply raise your hand. In a moment, I will also ask Chris to light 2 candles to start us off. One candle for Dick McNamara, a longtime pillar of this community who passed away on February 6th. And I also invite him to light one in memory and honor of Sam Nordquist. A vigil will be held for Sam tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Wood Library in Canandaigua. May we now share in this ritual of community care and witness to one another's hearts. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for each other, and for the world is held in this community and by the larger love that will be with us always. Amen. And blessed be.
All that our church is and all that our church does is made possible by the time, the talent, and the treasure that we give to our shared mission. Members and friends support this congregation financially through recurring giving, and on Sundays, we also give through our shared collection. I can't turn away from the mic when the mic is attached to my face. As part of the spiritual practice of generosity held collectively, 50 cents of every dollar given to our offering will now go to the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Program of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a program of the largest UU congregation in the country. This ministry connects people who are incarcerated with UU materials, providing support, hope, and liberation, and we invite you to give generously. You can give online at donate.rochesterunitarian.org, by Venmo, or here in the baskets here in the sanctuary. If it is a time and a listening ear that you have to offer, we invite you to become a pen pal by visiting worthynow.org. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, the offering will now be given and humbly received.
Turn off your mind, relax and flow downstream. It isn't dying, it is not dying. Lay down all thoughts, surrender to the void. It is shining, it is shining. That you may see the meaning from within. It is being, it is being. That love is all and love is everyone. It is knowing, it is knowing that ignorance and hate may mourn the dead. It is believing, it is believing. To listen to the colors of your dreams. It is not living, it is not living. Or play the game existence to the end of the beginning, 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 of the beginning.
Thank you, Orange Sky, for bringing some psychedelic tunes to our service about the mind and consciousness. I'm going to need everyone's help first with a responsive reading. This is, in fact, from our one of the readings found in our gray hymnal. It is by the French Catholic, somewhat heretical Catholic Jesuit priest, and I will not pronounce this very well, but Pierre Teilhard du Chardon. And if we can get to the next slide, my lines should be, yes, in regular text, and I will invite you to respond with the italics. Blessed be you, harsh matter, barren soil, stubborn rock, you who yield only to violence. Blessed be you, perilous matter, violent sea, untamable passion. Blessed be you, mighty matter, irresistible march of evolution, reality ever newborn. Blessed be you, universal matter, unmeasurable time, boundless ether, triple abyss of stars and atoms and generations. So where is my mind? Not just a seminal song in the grunge genre, but what is my mind? What is this thing we experience as consciousness? And where is it? What is it made out of? How does it relate to that immeasurable matter? Today's sermon topic comes to us by way of the church auction. This is an auction sermon, won by Neb Durek. So, caveat, if you are totally bored by this sermon, normally I would invoke our tradition's freedom of the pulpit and, sort of say, too bad, I'll try again next time. But in this case, I would encourage you to bid on a sermon from me at the upcoming auction on April 26th. But for this morning, the book that Neb assigned me to preach about is called Galileo's Error, Foundations for a New Science of Consciousness by Philip Goff. Now that title, Galileo's Error, is what I'd call a little bit of a clickbait headline, right? It's trying to make you think, oh, was Galileo mistaken? Let's find out more about that. It wasn't so much that Galileo made a mistake when going about his science, but rather that Galileo did something which both enabled an explosive scientific revolution, of course, but also limited what this new science could ultimately tell us, certainly about consciousness. And in fact, it was that very limiting that allowed the scientific revolution to take place. So you may have heard in the quote from 1623 that Galileo declared, "Mathematics shall be the language of science." The advantage of this is that you could speak French or German or English or any language or no language at all if we ever got to meet extraterrestrial aliens, right? No matter who we communicated with in the universe, even the trees, perhaps, if we could talk with them, could understand the abstract notions of math. And so science, if limited to just mathematical, quantifiable measurements, could become a universal language and could discover and predict quite a bit. And so Galileo said that all objects of inquiry, all things that exist, we are only going to consider things that have size, that have shape, that have a location, and have motion. And that describes a fair bit of things that we know to exist in our universe. But what about sensory qualities? Taste, touch, feel, the vibe that we have, the emotion that we feel. When we consider a lemon, the yellowness or the sourness of a lemon doesn't exist in the lemon itself necessarily, but it can exist in the mind or the consciousness of the person that is experiencing it. And now a ruthlessly mathematical science can break down the mechanics of sight and taste and describe how light interacts with the eye and the brain, and how the brain interprets colors from the light, and how it interprets chemicals as a taste or a scent. But for all that science can tell us about light and vision, for instance, it can't actually prove, or it hasn't yet, that we all see or experience the same colors. Your yellow may be different from my yellow, even as our eyes take in the same 575 nanometer wavelength of light on the electromagnetic spectrum. The point here is that we know individually from our own experiences that there are subjective qualities of the world experienced by our minds. We know this because we are each doing it all the time. But material science, this limited physical science, can't account for those in qualitative terms. Now, this was hardly a problem for Galileo because, like the majority of Europeans at the time, he was a Christian who believed in a basically dualist cosmos. That is, that there were two fundamental types of of reality. There was physical matter, like the human body and the earth on the one hand, and then there was the soul that inhabited and animated a human body and would survive the body after death and was also separate from it in an important way. There was a spiritual God who was separate from the physical world of creation, but also infused certain parts of creation with life and a soul. So Galileo solved the problem of consciousness through the answer of a religious dualism. Others, like many of the new atheists of the early 21st century, they solve this problem by taking a purely materialist view. They go hard in that direction of Galileo's statement that mathematics is the ultimate language of the universe. They acknowledge that physical science hasn't explained consciousness in purely mathematical terms yet, but that doesn't mean that it won't eventually. And this can be a compelling and reasonable position. Physical science has answered many questions we thought unanswerable before, and it might someday give us such answers, how to account for subjective sensory experience in quantitative terms. But it can only do this if we assume that the fundamental assumption of the materialists is right, that there is no other kind of being or existence. But this is why Philip Goff's argument focuses on this question of the foundations of Galilean science, because he is skeptical that a purely physical and mathematical science, a purely quantitative science, can explain what is essentially a qualitative phenomenon of consciousness. So what does Goff suggest as a solution? What is this idea that is so exciting that Neb bid mumble dollars at last year's auction to get it into the pulpit? Enter panpsychism. Not a religion about cookware. Panpsychism is the idea that consciousness is a fundamental and ubiquitous feature of the universe. That is to say, consciousness is in everything that exists, down to the smallest explanatory particles and categories, like electrons and quarks. And it's everywhere. Nothing is exempt from having some degree of consciousness. In the same way that those quantitative features from Galileo are in everything everywhere. Nothing that exists can do so without having a size, a shape, a location, and a value for movement, even if that value is zero and it is a still object. Panpsychism adds that if something exists, then it also has some form of consciousness. Now, you may be asking, what is meant by consciousness in this sense? Admittedly, it may be something that we don't fully understand in its most basic and fundamental parts, which of course is the case for physical reality, by the way. If you've ever heard of quantum physics, you may know that as you get down deep enough to the fundamental particles of reality, we start to not understand quite as much. But in its more complex form, consciousness is what we experience most directly and viscerally. It is the stuff of our own mind, our own awareness, our own reasoning. As Goff puts it, most panpsychists will deny that your socks are conscious. They don't have their own life in the mind the way that a human being or an animal does. But they do assert that they are ultimately composed of things that are conscious. He also writes, if electrons have experience, then it is of some unimaginably simple form. It makes me think, a way that I wrap my head around this is thinking about the scales of complexity between a single-celled organism on the one hand and a complex animal like a human being. Clearly, we identify both as living beings, as having the quality of life, but one is much more complex and different than the other. Now, lest you think that this is some newfangled idea coming out of nowhere, you should know that the modern movement of panpsychists are actually following the lead of respected philosophers and scientists from a century ago. In particular, the great English philosopher and Nobel laureate Bertrand Russell and the English scientist Arthur Eddington, who you may not have heard of. I had not heard of Eddington before, but he was the astronomer whose experiments in 1919 proved Einstein's general theory of relativity to be true. At the time, and even today, the general public understands that a general sense that physical science is something which will eventually be able to provide a theory of everything, an account of all reality that is coherent, simple, and most importantly can make predictions about future events. But in contrast to this view, writing in the 1920s, both Russell and Eddington argued that physics has been so successful at what it does precisely because it has stopped trying to tell us anything about the true intrinsic nature of matter. Again, physical science will tell us how big, what shape, where it's moving, all these things about an object matter, but it won't tell us what it is. Goff says this simply by stating, physics tells us not what matter is, but only what it does. Stephen Hawking put it this way in A Brief History of Time: even if there is only one possible unified theory, that's just a set of rules and equations. What is it that breathes fire into these equations and makes a universe for them to describe? Panpsychism offers an answer to this question about reality, at least in part. And it actually starts at a much more fundamental level, in the same place that Descartes started his famous philosophy, saying his famous, if woefully dualist, quip, "I think, therefore I am." Goff agrees because in the sense that consciousness is the only bit of physical reality that we actually understand. Everything else we are observing externally to ourselves, but consciousness is that bit of the universe, of reality, that we experience directly. If we accept that our minds are not mere illusions of consciousness controlled by the physical happenings of neurons, perhaps developed for some evolutionary advantageous purpose, which is materialism, the view of materialism, and if we also reject that our minds are somehow wholly unlike our bodies, right? That idea of dualism, that there's physical and spiritual or conscious existence as separate things. If we reject those possibilities, then the simplest hypothesis concerning the intrinsic nature of matter outside of our brains is that it is continuous with the intrinsic nature of matter inside of our brains. The idea that what we are and what we experience may be much more closely related to what everything else in the universe really is. If this is true, it is a potentially revolutionizing worldview and concept, and it also echoes truths that have been spoken by prophets and sages in ages past. Perhaps this is just Western philosophy and science coming to articulate in its own way the truths of non-dualism, emptiness, and interbeing that Buddhists have described for centuries. Perhaps this is what Jesus meant by saying, "The kingdom of God is within you." Perhaps this is a philosophical and scientific framework which is not only compatible with Unitarian Universalism, but expresses and implies and supports the very values and theologies that we tend to already hold about interdependence, our place in the universe, the importance of nurturing our own minds and souls in relationship with all that exists. To be clear, we are a big tent pluralistic faith. You can just as easily be a Unitarian Universalist and be a materialist, or a dualist of any kind, or be a panpsychist. I'm not necessarily trying to argue that you ought to or must be a panpsychist, but I think this is a topic worth preaching about and introducing to you, because if you are a Unitarian Universalist and you haven't heard about panpsychism, it seems like the kind of thing you might want to know about. Certainly, Neb thinks so. Now, there are many fascinating implications of panpsychism, and to name a few very briefly, one is that it allows for free will to be understood in a way that materialism doesn't lend itself to. Because if you think that all matter, all that exists, is just the mathematical physics of the universe playing out in predictable ways, then it's hard to say that any action is because of an actual choice. But our common sense notion of having free will coincides with panpsychism, understanding consciousness and experience and choice as fundamental to existence. This allows us to see ourselves and others as moral agents, making moral choices and holding each other accountable for our actions. Panpsychism also supports our UU values of interdependence and equity, framing all people and indeed all beings and all things as even more related and interconnected through the fundamental aspects of reality than either a materialist or dualist worldview can account for. But most exciting to this pluralistic mystic is that panpsychism offers a way to scientifically explore and confirm the validity of mystical experiences and truths attested to by those prophets and sages across the ages. The mystic who meditates until reaching enlightenment, or the monastic who prays until dark nights of the soul give way to ecstatic union with God. In the panpsychist worldview, these do not have to be fools who have tricked themselves into hallucinating beautiful things, nor are they spirits who have transcended their limited corporeal forms, but they are unified, living, conscious beings of existence who have accessed a kind of consciousness where the usual divisions between the self and the external world that is experienced dissolve, and all that is left is being connected to reality in a way that can only be subjectively experienced by a mind, not something that can ever be measured, quantified, or communicated. It's a training of one's mind and consciousness, not on the next physical or emotional need or the mathematical physical realities before us or the next response to external stimuli, but it's a training of one's mind on the inward connection and integration to the deepest truths of our own selves and of the whole universe. I'm going to invite back up Orange Sky here as I close out. But part of what excites me is that what resonates so much for me personally is that this is basically my personal theology of spiritual practice. That it allows me to not ascribe to a dualism where there is I am both an animal, a physical body, but also a spiritual mind. But I can combine those two and understand that as unified while also having this sense that my consciousness does exist in a gray space between the more reactive, survival instinct, fear, and scarcity-based ways of being on the one hand, and on the other, there's a more expansive consciousness, a slower, less reactive, more loving way of being when I slow myself down and get connected to my own being and what is really real. So I think a spiritual practice is whatever I can do to help myself, not just to think more in a certain way or to reflect on reality, but to truly be and exist as a whole body-mind. That's one word, a compound word, a body-mind. Being more in alignment with the truths of interconnectedness and love that I not only believe in as a Unitarian Universalist, but that I experience as fundamental to reality when I let myself just be, when I turn off my mind, relax, and float downstream, as the song goes. I think panpsychism is a very powerful idea that it's very congruous with Unitarian Universalist theology and values. It makes sense to me on multiple levels, including as a scientific approach, and that it makes sense of religious experience, especially the part that mystics of diverse traditions tend to agree upon. And most of all, I feel that it is something affirmed by my own direct experience of the wonder that is to be a conscious part of this big, beautiful, and mysterious universe. And so please join me and Orange Sky now in our closing song, Across the Universe.
of joy are drifting through the open mind, possessing and caressing me. Jagaru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jagaru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of life are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love which shines around me like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. Jagaru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Jagaru Deva. Jagaru Deva. Jagaru Deva. Jagaru Deva.
Church is not done just because worship is about to close. We have connections. Please stick around for our connecting in small groups and various topics. We've got a lot of things going on. A couple updates though. The 40s plus singles group is not going to be meeting today. The leader could not make it because of the ice and weather. The policy and governance event is not a committee meeting, but that is actually the board offering a forum to help people learn more about policy governance and how our congregation is governed and operated. So please come and attend that. That is also available on Zoom, so there will be a link in the chat to join that on our Zoom. We have the Inquirers series, which if you are new or newer-ish here, this is the best place to go to learn more about our faith and our church. We'll be talking about the worship here and the liturgical calendar of our year. We've got radical self-care for these times. There's climate resilience connection. Upstairs, we've got the flute circle and the new forming UU humanist group will be gathering. We've got an event about the General Assembly, the annual national gathering of all Unitarian Universalists across the country will be happening in Baltimore this June, so come learn more about that. Parents of trans children are gathering, the spiritual survivors are hanging out, and the high school youth group is having a meeting. So there's a lot going on, and we hope to see you and connect with you. And I will invite Chris up to extinguish our chalice as we share our unison words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May we know ourselves and see others as universal matter, unmeasurable time, boundless ether. May we dissolve our narrow standards of measurement and find the dimensions of God, the dimensions of truth, of reality revealed to us in our conscious minds. Go in peace, blessed be, and I love you.